my beautiful people, welcome back to my channel, and today we're talking about the newly launched Natasha Denona I a Nude palette. This has been a highly anticipated video. In today's video, you'll see 5 different look tutorials, including the look that I'm having on my eyes today. I will share all my final first impression thoughts at the end of this video, and as per usual, this video has timestamps for your convenience. If you enjoyed this video and find it helpful, give this a big thumb up. It does help my channel out, and if you're not yet a subscriber, I invite you to subscribe to my channel before you leave today. And now, without further ado, let's dive in. Natasha Denona I a Nude palette was just recently launched. It is a mid-size Natasha Denona palette, very beautiful component, very sleek design. It is a little bit thicker palette. We've already seen this type of design in a retro glam. It is a mid-size palette, so you can take out all the shades. That's why there are dots in the back. There's some information here on the sticker, and the outside packaging looks very similar to the palette itself, very nice and sleek with a shiny little detailing here. And in the back of the outside packaging, you will see a diagram for the shades and all the ingredients for each shade and some extra information here. The palette is made in Italy and it is a 24-month shelf life. This is a 15-pan eyeshadow palette, and there are different formulas here. There are 7 matte eyeshadows here, and they're all cream mattes. They're all the same formula. This palette does not have the cream to powder, very well-known formula from Natasha Denona. So all the mattes are the same cream mattes. And then there are 3 different shimmer formulas here. So these 3 shades, there are sparkling foils. We've already seen those in the recent Yaka palette, and these are your beautiful, smooth, super reflective, amazing, gorgeous shimmer eyeshadows. The shade Whisper and Travertine, they are metallics. They're very smooth. They almost look like they're satins. Of course, you will see those in this makeup look tutorial. I give you a little bit more information about all the shades once I apply them on my face. And then there's a new shimmer formula that's introduced in this palette. It's called Sparkling Wet, and there are 3 shades with that formula: Delilah, Sheen, and Mia. For this first look, I want to do something with the peachy salmon tones. I'm going to start with this matte shade Fair. I'm just going to apply it everywhere, right here, to prep my lid. It's the type of shade that really doesn't come off on my skin much, so it's a really nice lid setting shade. I'm going to use the same brush, and I'm going to go into this shade next called Wit. I'm going to start applying it into my crease. Now I am going into this next shade called Vague. I'm going into my alter ego number 7 blending brush. It's a little bit more narrow, and I'm going to build up my crease. I'm going to use the same shade that I just used on my lower lash line, just switching the brush. This shade has a really nice intensity and depth to it, at least on my skin tone. So next I'm going into the darkest matte shade called Silhouette, and I'm going to create that smoky outer corner. Same shade, lower lash line. Okay, so I want to do this shade in the inner corner. Let me do that first, and this is the shade Mia. This does have texture. I want to show it to you. I feel like I'm going to have a lot of fallout, so let me spray it. This is a very beautiful shade, but it definitely has a lot of texture. So for my lid, I'm going to mix 2 shades. I'm going to mix this one and this one. They are the same textures. They are sparkling foils. Look how beautiful that is. I'm going to just put this one here. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, this is gorgeous. This is why we buy Natasha Denona eyeshadows, period. And then I'm going to go into that brownie shade, Filigree. Look how beautiful that is. Beautiful. And I'm going to just put that right here. Mix them together. I don't want to cover my outer corner completely, but I just want to do this small section here, and I'm gonna mix them together like that in the middle, so there's no harsh or obvious transition. I'm gonna go back to this outer corner shade, to the matte brown, and I'm just going to re-intensify this area just tiny bit. So both of these shades, sparkling foils, they are somewhat textured, they're thicker, even though they're gorgeous on the eyes. However, there is a bit of a fallout. So let me go ahead, finish off liner, eyelashes, etc. I'm gonna come back to show you the finished look. Guys, this is a finished look. I added mascara and the waterline liner All the products will be linked for you in the description box. These are all the shades that I used, including this very first matte shade. This very first look, I have to say that I am a very big fan. Hey guys, so for the look number 2, I am going to do something with the taupes. So I'm going to start with this shade right here. This is a lightest taupey shade called Mesh. This builds up really nicely. Initial layer definitely went on much lighter, but this is beautiful. I'm not switching the brush. I'm going into this shade next called Stone. This shade is described as a light, medium, warm taupe, and I'm going to go a little bit lower than I just placed my first color and just build up this outer corner a little bit. I switched my brush to Refer 14. This is a little bit smaller. Both of these shades just blend into each other really lovely, but I just feel like it's not as dark as I expected it to be. On my lower lash line, I think I'm gonna go with this shade next. This shade is called Tender, and this is a matte medium taupe. This shade is definitely giving me the gray tone vibe versus the other two, the first two that I applied on my upper lid. They were definitely more taupe. They were true taupe. They had a little bit of like soft, like something pinky undertone in them. They are much softer on my skin tone right here than this one. This one is definitely pulling like cool tone gray. Next, I'm going into this shade. I am going to try to use this shade once again on a different brush. I want to see if I can build up this outer corner, if it's going to give me a little bit more depth. Smaller brush is definitely the way to go if you want to use this darker gray shade. Use the smaller brushes, even like more denser brushes, and make very tiny either packing or very small circles. And I definitely feel like I get very nice opacity here on the outer corner. If you are lighter than me of a skin tone, I think this will work very lovely for you. I'm gonna go into this shade and my pencil brush from Refer. Now this is a fun moment. I want to go into the shade Delilah. This is a new formula that they're introducing in this palette. It's called Sparkling Wet Effect Silver Brown. So I want to use this all over my lid. I want to pick it up on a brush, and I want to show you that there's quite a bit of a texture and definitely get a little bit more concentrated color. This is very pretty. It's very pretty, very evening-like, very glam. Even after spraying my brush, you guys can see how much fallout I get. So I'm trying to remove this from under my eye. The glitter does not come off, so just something to consider. I thought I was going to use this shade, but I'm going to use this one instead because we haven't used it yet. It does have the same texture. This shade is called Sheen, and this is that Sparkling Wet formula. This shimmer has a little bit more of like that peachy, salmon-y undertone. It just seems like it blends with my skin tone so well, it's barely noticeable, but it gives you sheen. Okay, this is the finished look. I added mascara and this Essence liquid eyeliner, Maybelline Tattoo Studio silver liner on my waterline, and this is the finished look. These are all the shades that I used. I wanted to show you the difference between these two eyelids. You can even tell on camera that this is much thinner formula than this one. However, they are both very beautiful and reflective. I have to say that my personal opinion that this formula definitely looks a little bit more sophisticated. So for this next look, I actually want to do something very simple. So I'm going to start with this shade, and I'm using my Oden's Eye blending brush from their set. Then I'm going to go into this shade next, called Wit. I really like the Oden's Eye brushes. They're so nice and soft. Then I'm going to take another Oden's Eye brush. This is a flat blending brush. I'm going to go into the same shade, Wit, build up this area. I want it to be a little bit brighter. Then I want to go, I think, with this shade. It does have a little bit of that salmon-y, a little bit of a peachy undertone, and I just wanted to place it all over my lid. On my inner corner, I like to go into this satin shade. It's called Whisper. Oh wow, this is so much prettier on the skin that's on the swatch. The swatch kind of look a little bit boring, but this is actually very beautiful. I actually like it more on the skin now that I tried it. I'm glad I tried that here because it's very, very pretty. On my lower lash line, I'm gonna go with this darker salmon shade called Vague. This is a very pretty shade. I think this is one of my favorite shades, if not my favorite shade in the entire palette. Okay, this is the finished look. I used my Patrick Ta Major Dimensions cream brown shade to do that liner. These are all the shades that I used. So on this eye right now, I would like to do something very, very smoky. So I'm going to start with this shade and then I'm going to transition into this shade. I want just a little bit of wash of color to get us started. I'm going to switch the brush and I'm going to go into this shade Vague. Then I'm going to go into the darkest shade in the palette called Silhouette. Oh yes, this is exactly what I needed. Same thing on the outer corner. And I'm just packing this shade right here. The entire time when I'm doing this, I look down and I just start tapping this out just on the edge. Continue looking down so your lid is open. I like to connect my halo eyes here just very briefly. I don't put fresh color in there. I just use whatever is on my eye and just create that shadow here. I'm gonna go with the darkest salmon shade. Now I'm going to go into our shade Silhouette, smoke this corner out, and I'm connecting it to my outer corner. So now, you guys, I'm going to go into this shade a little bit because I don't want to add any more of this dark shade. I'm holding my brush towards the very end of it, so there's minimum pressure. I don't really want to be blending this shade out because I really like the concentration. I even can dip into this darker shade called Tender because it's a little bit more gray, so I can mix those two shades together, Stone and Tender, but just ever so slightly tap off all the excess so you do not necessarily have that opacity, but you just have like dust to blend out this outer corner. Now I'm looking straight up in front of me into the mirror. This is where you're going to create that shape. I can even bring it here a little bit to reinforce that arch. For my inner corner, I definitely want to go with this shade. I think it's very, very beautiful. It's called Whisper. It's very, very nice and smooth shade. I am going just to place it here a little bit. That's very pretty. So I'm going to go with this shade that we have already used in one of our previous looks. It's really beautiful and bright. It's perfect for this type of eye. And then I'm going to go into this shade called Ella. Pick it up on my flat brush. This is so beautiful. And I want to place it here on the sides of the center shade. I want to do something else. I want to use this shade. It's called Filigree. Pick it up on a pencil brush. Apply it right here in the middle for a little bit of sparkle. This is a finished look for this Halo Smoky Eye. I added my Estee Lauder mascara and also this No Budge Cream Eyeshadow in the shade Plateau. I put it in my waterline and also on my upper lid without a wing, just to define the line. These are all the shades that I used. And I think the textures came together really nicely in this look. Totally forgot to do that, but let me put this in my brow bone. This is Alter Ego number 10 brush. Look how beautiful. This is a perfect brow bone shade. So nice. I'm so happy this shade is here. Even though I did not initially have too many expectations, I really thought it was a boring shade. Not anymore, because I think this looks beautiful and it makes perfect sense being here in this palette. Okay, for this last look, I'm going to be creating this very simple eye and I wanted to try new textures. I'm going to work with these two. So for my initial crease buildup for the background color, is going to be a lot of back and forth blending shades between this one, and that lightest taupe shade. So I'm going to start with the shade Fair, the one that's a lid setting shade with, and then I'm going to go into this shade called Wit. And just ever so slightly blend it here. I don't want too much color. Then I'm going into the shade Vague. Then I'm going to go into this shade called Stone. On my bottom lash line, I'm going with this shade. With the smudger brush, I'm going into this shade called Silhouette. For my lid, I'm using this shade Travertine. For my inner corner, I'm placing the shade Whisper. Also, same shade on the brow bone. Okay guys, this is the finished look. I added silver liner on my waterline and my Estee Lauder mascara. Very simple, very elegant, something that's very comfortable to wear for every day personally for me. It required a little bit of blending back and forth initially to create that soft transition between those salmony shades and taupes. Make sure they're like nice and seamlessly blended. And after that, it was just very, very easy. And these are all the shades that I use. All the mattes here, and then these two shiny shades. I hope you enjoy all the look tutorials. I hope you find them helpful and inspirational. Let me know which one was your favorite. So this is the time where I share my first impression, final thoughts. The formula of Natasha Denona mattes is incredible. It's one of the best and most unique formulas out there that I know. When it comes to mattes, this palette technically broken down in two different shade categories. There are the taupey grays, and then there are the salmon clay rusty kind of shades. This is one of my favorite shades, if not the favorite shade out of the entire palette. I think it's just so stunning. You can definitely differentiate your looks, go in one way or another, or you can also mix them up, blend them together. And as you can see in this look, I did just that, and they blended into each other and complemented each other very, very beautifully. As far as the shimmer formula goes, I definitely am a huge fan of her sparkling foils. Incredible, incredible formula to my personal preferences. I was also pleasantly surprised with these two shades, the one that I have on my eyes. Like I mentioned earlier, they just looked a little bit boring in the palette, and then the swatches were not super impressive, but on the eyes, they just look so beautiful. I can't really see it too well in my viewfinder, but I know that in person they look very, very beautiful, smooth and reflective. So that was a really pleasant surprise. I think these two shades are just very, let's just say, wearable and comfortable for every day. You can take them day to night. I think those two shades are very versatile. And this shade is your beautiful inner corner and your brow bone. I think you may even use it as a highlighter. Say you traveled somewhere, you forgot your highlighter. I don't think it's going to work on everybody because it does have a little bit of opacity. It might be clashing with some skin tones, but I think some skin tones can benefit using it as a highlighter. I do not exclude that as an option. And as far as the new sparkling wet formula, I have a little bit of mixed feelings about it at the moment. I have to say that it definitely does remind me a little bit of a Ethereal Eyes from Mario eyeshadow palette, the new formula that was there. But I will not go there talking about that palette. I will have that video link for you in the description box. So there are 3 shades, and I find that 2 of them are similar, and one of them is slightly bit different, and I'll explain you why. The shade Delilah and Mia, they seem to be the same because as far as formulation, because they do have a lot of multicolored glitter in them. And this shade right here has the same feel to it. However, I do not see up close that it has so many different color particles. In these 2 shades, I see a little bit of like pink and purple and like green. There's just a lot of dimension going on. And this shade doesn't seem to have that many. It just definitely has some glitter particles, but not as many as these 2. That's what I've noticed from my experience playing with these shades. This shade, however, also noticeably had less texture, which to me, it explains the difference, because if you put more glitter particles into the formulation, it will have more texture. Generally, it is a cool tone palette, but it's not too cool. It's not too gray. Initially, I wasn't sure if I was going to pick up this palette. However, I looked at it closer, and then these 2 shades definitely sold me on this palette. If these shades were not here, I would not be buying this. This would be a little bit too cold tone for me. My favorite mini eyeshadow palette from Natasha Denona is my Mini Zendo. In my eyes, this is an extension to Mini Zendo, and one of my favorite palettes in my collection from the drugstore from more affordable is this one, Nubian 3 Coral palette from Juvia's Place. You can kind of see the resemblance. This one is definitely much more saturated and warmer when it comes to this one palette, but it just kind of gave me a vibe and the color story somewhat in my head that this is something that I could possibly enjoy myself, not just purchasing it for a review reason. If I would describe this palette in one word, definitely giving me bridal vibes. I can also see this being a nice comfortable winter palette. The other 2 words that come to my mind when I think of this palette as general is minimalistic and modest. These are my first impression, final thoughts on the palette. Let me know what you think of the launch. Were you excited? Were you thinking to pick it up? Have you already picked it up? Share your thoughts. And if you, of course, have any additional questions, I'll leave them in the comment section below. I would be more than happy to chat with you there. If you enjoyed this video, I do have the entire playlist of tutorials that you can check out, as well as the Natasha Denona playlist. I will have all those playlists linked for you in the description box and at the end of the video in the cards for you to enjoy. If you like this video, give this a big thumb up. If you're not yet a subscriber, I invite you to subscribe to my channel before you leave today. And thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in my next one. Bye.